So, thank you for coming along this morning, and thank you to everybody who will be watching this in their own time. I am going to talk to you this morning about valuing send and how valuing send is being used in Somerset. So I'm Chloe. For those who haven't seen me, some people may well have done. I've done a couple of these sessions in the past. But I work for a company called Impower, and Impower work exclusively with the public sector. And a large part of that work is in high needs and send. For people's understanding, I'm sure it's always helpful. I've been here for a number of years now, but before that, I've done lots and lots of public sector work. So I've worked for a couple of councils and an RNIB, which is a disability charity as well. And what I'm going to talk about this morning is where valuing send came from. So what it is and where it came from, how it works in practice, how it's been used so far in Somerset, how it will be used in Somerset in this coming academic year, and then just to confirm next steps and how you can expect to be engaged if you are a parent carer. So what is valuing send and where did it come from? Valuing send it's a tool, but it's more than that really. It's an approach. And it was developed initially by 3 local areas alongside a number of the schools in each of those settings, in each of those areas, a number of parent carers in each of those areas, and with support from us back in 2019. And since then, it's been through several iterations, has been used in over 10 local authority areas, and is now being fully rolled out in 5 areas. So when I say fully rolled out, I mean it's being used in all of the schools within that local area. And at a high level, valuing send and its ambition is it's about improving outcomes. So it's about improving the outcomes of children and their inclusion within school. And alongside that, it's very much about improving the experience of families and professionals working across the system and in support of those children. It does that by developing a clear, a rounded picture of the needs of those children from birth right up until post 16 and 25 for young people with SEND. And by looking at that information alongside the readiness of their setting to meet their needs, and then bringing the two together to be able to better plan support for that child at any one point in time, and also think about how they progress through their education. So using that information to better plan moves between school years and new class teachers, for example, and also moves into new schools. So for example, if they're moving between primary school and secondary school, or even beyond, and thinking about preparing for adulthood. That information then can also be used at a whole school level for schools that are using valuing send for all of their children with additional needs. They'll then be able to get a really good picture of what that looks like in any one year group and ensure they're using that information to inform the staff they have in place, the skills they have in place, and also their school development and training needs to ensure that they can meet the needs of those children as they move through their school. So this is what valuing send looks like, or rather this is what the output of the valuing send tool looks like once it's been completed. You'll see 3 things here. The green line there, the lime green line, is the readiness of the school or the setting to meet children's needs across their school. You'll see there are 5 points there on the radar diagram. So 4 of those are the domains of needs, so communication and interaction, cognition and learning, social, emotional and mental health needs, sensory and physical, and then the 5th point there on the radar diagram is independence. And that is something that is used throughout the tool with children of all ages in an age-appropriate way and in a need-appropriate way. But it is used throughout so that there is a constant eye on how do we make sure we're being as ambitious about children's futures as possible and supporting them to go on to live as full a life as they can and their families want for them. So that's really, really important. But that green line is the setting readiness, so the readiness of the school to meet needs. The blue line you'll see there is the child's need profile. So this is not a real child, of course. This is just an illustration, but you'll see there the blue line is slightly different to the green line in this image. The pink line is what we call home confidence, the home confidence section. Now this is slightly different. This is for families to use if they want to use the tool in that way, to add an additional layer of information about the child in their home environment, their needs there, and any tools or techniques that they find really useful in supporting their child at home that may well benefit the school and meeting their needs at school, or vice versa. I won't talk about that in too much detail now because I'm shortly going to play a presentation or a little clip for you from one of the parent carers who was involved in Valuing Send's initial development, who talks about that in a little bit more detail. Now, this is the output of the tool, and sitting behind this is a lot of information that helps the schools to generate their setting readiness score, and that is based on a list of tools, techniques, practices, resources that you might expect to see in schools across those different scores there. And that was developed by schools themselves, alongside lots of different professionals like educational psychologists and parent carers as well. And that's how they approach the setting readiness exercise. Likewise, for the child need elements of the tool, the process involves a series of detailed descriptors across those different domains as to how that child's need presents in school, and through completing that exercise, and that's best done by people who know that child best, so the class teacher, the Senko potentially, alongside families when it works best, to generate that child need profile. So there's a lot of detail, as there needs to be, the complexity of the work that schools do, and also of children's needs and how unique they are. So there's a lot of detail sitting behind, but this is the output that brings all of that together. And we've found and we've heard from lots of people, including families, that they really value the simplicity of this diagram for starting those initial conversations and having clearer conversations with their child's school. Often, and I'm sure people will recognise, paperwork is really lengthy, full of jargon, and this isn't intended to replace any of that, but it's supposed to support and be an additional view that can help bring some clarity to some of those conversations. So how's it been used so far in Somerset? So in the summer term of the last academic year, a small number of schools in Somerset were using Valuing Send. That's the schools you can see on the screen here. So Limpsham First, Cheddar First, Hugh Sexy, Fairlands Middle School, Kings of Wessex Upper School, and then also Fairmead, which is a special school. And they were asked to focus on a number of things. So the first of those being children and young people moving into a transition period. So by that I mean if they're about to move on to their next school, or those with social, emotional and mental health needs, or any other children that the school felt would really benefit from using the tool to better explore, better understand their needs in a bit more detail. And here are some of the reflections from those schools that took part. Now, there are a number of quotes on the screen, which I won't read out to you, but this will be shared around with you after the session. A couple of things I want to point out. So there were 32 child profiles that were completed, and a lot of those were in Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3, but a real mix, and also a real mix of need of those children who took part. What is important to say is that that involved needs across the spectrum. So yes, there were some children who took part who had education, health and care plans, but there were also those who did not. And Valuing Send was designed to be used and is used in lots of other places with all sorts of children, including at that really early identification of need stage, right through to those who have slightly more complex needs. So it's very much intended to be supportive of everyone. The school said a number of things when we asked them to feedback, one of which was that they'd found it really helpful for reviewing need, for taking a step back and reviewing that child's needs and sense checking whether they had everything in place that they could to best meet those needs. In lots of cases, they said actually it gave them the confidence that really was happening and that they were really able to meet those needs. And others said that it helped them to identify where there were any current gaps and also to think about how best to fill them, whether that's seeking additional support or something else they could be doing differently within school. They said they thought that would be helpful for monitoring children's needs over time, and in other areas, that's exactly how it's being used. So as a part of that annual review process, for example. They talked about how they found that it helped to create a common language or a common way of talking about children's needs, and that was both helpful with families, with parent carers, but also with the other professionals they were working with to support that child. And they talked about that at a glance radar diagram that I've just showed you and how helpful they found that for being really clear and having really focused discussions. And the final thing they said is that they found the setting readiness exercise in itself really helpful for taking a step back and thinking about where they are as a school and what else they might want to do to further strengthen their offer. And they said they'd like to do that again over time, again, possibly on an annual basis, to check in that the things they were doing, the things they were putting in place were having an impact. So here are two examples from that pilot period. I wanted to show you this because it helps to demonstrate the value of the tool when it's supporting that move between schools for children. So what you'll see here on the screen, two child profiles, one on the left, one on the right. The blue line is the child's needs. So you'll see they're slightly different there. The child on the left-hand side, their needs are highest around social, emotional and mental health needs. And for the child on the right-hand side, it's much more about communication and interaction and their independence as well. The green line, however, is not the middle school, which is where they currently are. So it's not the setting readiness of the middle school, but instead it is the setting readiness of the upper school to meet children's needs. And so by layering these two bits of information together, that can help professionals supporting the child, their school, but also their families to begin thinking about, well, how do we make that move to their next school as smooth and as happy a process as possible, and support that next school to be aware of the needs of the children who will be joining them and planning for those as early as possible. So what's coming next, I'm sure, is what people are thinking. So what, or how rather, is Valuing Zen going to be used in Somerset moving forward in this academic year? First thing to say is that it's being used primarily in one area, so that is the Sedgemoor area. And there are four ways in which it is going to be used. The first of which, and the biggest of which, is going to be to support that phase transfer process, so that move between schools for year sixes who will next September be moving to secondary school into year 7. So children in year 6 who have education, health and care plans. And that will be similar to what I've just showed you on the previous screen, being able to look at that child's needs alongside their phase transfer annual review and look at the setting readiness of that next school and support that next school to begin planning as early as possible for that move. The second thing is using the tool to think about preparing for adulthood and strengthening preparing for adulthood for year 11s in one special school, so a small number of children in one special school. The third thing is using the tool to begin to support discussions around what comes next for children who are currently attending a couple of the pupil referral units, so the PRUs in Somerset. So thinking about where is their next school. So as I'm sure lots of people will know, those are their short-term, short-stay schools. So thinking about what is the best long-term plan and support for this child. And the final bit is, in some cases where the school and where the family would find it helpful to begin to support the school and family together to further explore the needs of children who might have no confirmed additional needs at this stage, or might be SEND support, but those children who do not have education, health and care plans, because as I said, it's used across all of those different groups. So this is a video that I am going to try and play for you. Let's see if I am skilled enough to do that. I'm going to click share with sound, and I'm going to go back to my screen, and I'm going to try and play. You're going to have to give me a little shout out if you can hear this, if that's all right.
Hello everyone, my name is Carol Kelsey, and like you, I'm a parent of children with SEND, and I've been asked to talk to you today about valuing SEND, which I was involved with in Hertfordshire, which was one of the 3 original local authority areas that were involved in developing valuing SEND. I'm sorry that I can't be with you today, but my diary was already full up. And so we thought it would be better if I did a little video rather than producing some more slides for you to look at. So I was part of the original working group of parents, as I said, looking at this in Hertfordshire, and it was our group that first introduced the idea of the home confidence element as being part of valuing SEND. So why did we want that? For 2 main reasons really. Obviously we knew that parents and carers know their children best, and we knew that research shows that children do better where their parents are active and values part of their education. And that's especially true of our children with SEND, where both families and schools need support and extra information about how to support the children through their education system. So both schools and families also have useful information for each other around techniques and approaches that can work well for our children. And so the children benefit a lot from an improved relationship between schools and settings, between schools and families rather. And so that's why we felt that home readiness option was needed. It is an option, so families don't have to take part in the home readiness bit, but we think it's useful for families to do that because schools can help point them in the right direction for other services and help them perhaps with referrals that they need to support their children in their wider life. So also in the working group, we believe strongly that better conversations need to take place between schools and families around their children's needs, whatever level those needs might be at, so that whether that's SEND support or whether that's with an education for children with an education, health and care plan. So valuing SEND provides, we felt, a more consistent way of having that conversation, both within a school, so from year to year, from teacher to teacher, but also within a local area. So that gives a framework for those conversations to take place between schools and families. The conversations that you have in Valuing SEND focus really clearly on the children's needs and how those needs might be met. And in a way that helps a better conversation than perhaps we receive as families lots of written reports, which are often difficult to understand, have quite a bit of jargon in, and very often don't include anything around our children's independence, or are preparing for adulthood, as we talk about, which is so important for our children's future lives. The other thing that we particularly liked about Valuing Send was the simplicity of using the diagram that you've already seen in the slides, rather than always having to be referring to lots of reports or know those reports really well. And Valuing Send isn't there to replace those reports in any way, but really is a tool to help having those better conversations around the information that you've got about your child. So, in conclusion, what I'd like to say is, if you get the opportunity to get involved on a personal level in Valuing Send using that tool with your child, I'd strongly suggest that you give it a go. And also, if you're a parent who gets asked to take part in further focus groups or to respond to information or surveys that are sent out about Valuing Send, please do. Professionals, wherever they're working in SEND, whether they're working in education, health or social care, really need parents to help them design and improve the way they work and services. Without us, they can't get the same level of improvement as they can just from working on their own. That can be the same for your individual child and also for your local services across Somerset. Thank you for listening to me today, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the session. Bye-bye.
Excellent. So that was Carol. As she said at the beginning, Carol was involved in the initial development of Valuing Send and is a parent carer herself. And I felt it would be really helpful for you to hear from her. It's only so interesting to hear from me, isn't it? And Carol is, oh dear, I don't want to play again. Let me just move on to the next slide. Technical difficulties. Okay. So the final thing then I want to say before we finish with a Q&A is this. What comes next and what can people expect to hear? So at this stage, the council inclusion staff, so that includes people like advisory teachers, the SEND team, educational psychologists, they have been trained in the content and the detail of Valuing Send and how that works in practice. And the Sedgemoor schools have also been trained in Valuing Send. What will come next then is that those schools, if you are a parent of a child in one of those schools and they fall into one of those groups that I just talked about, and therefore could be involved in with Valuing Send in a bit more detail, those schools will be making direct contact with families in those instances and letting them know. And the final point, and this is absolutely key from our perspective, is that parent carers will be very, very closely involved in the use of Valuing Send for their child. Whether or not they choose to do the home confidence section, they will absolutely be a key part of the child need and setting readiness discussion. So that's really, really important. So you should, if you are a parent in one of those settings and your child is in one of those groups, you will hear more about that shortly. With that said, if you do have any other questions that you would like to ask before that happens, I'm Chloe. You can reach me via that email address. Alternatively, if you would prefer, you can go to the Parent Carer Forum and they can group up those questions and send them across to us so that we can respond to them. And likewise, if you have any questions for Carol, who you've just heard from, and would like to hear from her perspective as a parent, we can also coordinate that.